The story, the arc of the story, the richness of this stakeholder ecosystem that's coming together here, you're really starting to get the texture of it, the topography of the journey that we've been on. One of the things I'm very excited about today is the way in which we've seen firsthand how that more sort of organic, networked system in the middle there, that adaptive coalition in the middle there, how extraordinarily effective it's been at swarming into the areas that most need help, convening people around inventing new instruments, convening large organisations to come up with shared agreements and shared commitments. This type of operating system that heat, gas leaks, allies, mothers out front have been mastering can be put to work on any area. They weren't born to come up with the flux bar. They were born to solve whatever problem needs to be solved and to do the connecting and convening and that powerful curating, activating that group intelligence to remove whatever obstacle turns up. So one of the things that we're all collectively excited about is, as our organisations, our more formal, large corporations, our more formal, large governance structures, as they learn to collaborate with these more adaptive, purpose-driven, networked structures, we can develop this agility to go where the problems are and solve those collectively. So on that note, I want to point out that at 1 o'clock, Gas Leaks Allies is convening together to take this learning and to become more and more effective at reaching across many states nationally to do this kind of connecting and convening and problem solving between organisations. 1 o'clock at the Marriott Residence, it's at 120 Broadway, 6 Cambridge Centre. It's about an 8 to 10 minute walk, perfect after sitting. I want to ask if the mothers out front T-shirt wearers are here in the audience. Can you stand up? These amazing women have maps for you because they really want you to find it. And here's the big thing, or they'll figure out how to have maps. You watch, this is their adaptive thing. They have sandwiches, lunch, right? Did you all enjoy the cookies? And now get lunch too. So don't worry about stopping for food. There'll be food there as your reward for the hike. So that's 1 o'clock. So we're going really well with our time. I'm currently filling in while our Attorney General walks through the door. Hey! Oh. Attorney General Maura, Healey, you have the best timing in show business. Attorney General Maura, Healey, we're as grateful for the fact that you're here as we are for the fact that you've given us a very hard finish deadline, because you have here an incredibly complex stakeholder ecosystem that has gone through a morning of extraordinary exploration of this story of addressing gas leaks in Massachusetts. We know you've been deeply briefed on the story and the adventure, and we're really pleased to hear your thoughts on the significance of what's been achieved here. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, afternoon, I guess it is at this point. Thank you so much, Lee, for that introduction and for the opportunity to be with you here today. I also want to thank Audrey and Kelsey and everyone at Mothers Out Front, love the t-shirts, and the Gas Leaks Alliance. I really think that particularly in this time, the very idea that so many diverse stakeholders came together to work on solutions, find common ground, is really a model for so much of what we need to see happen across this country on so many fronts. And so our friends from National Grid and Columbia Gas and Eversource are here and at the table, helping to make this success possible. Good to see you all. We see each other in a variety of contexts, I know. That's good. But I mean that in the most genuine of ways, because I think, we all recognize that we come from different places and perspectives on any number of issues across this country. But what we need is collective active action, collective engagement, right? And a willingness to do the hard work, rolling up our sleeves, listening to one another, talking to one another, and trying to find some common ground. And so I just want to offer my congratulations to all of you who worked to make this day possible and for the great work that you have been doing. I'm also grateful to the Sloan Sustainability Institute for hosting all of us today. Big deal on this campus with a Nobel laureate. I mean, that's kind of it's pretty good. Let's hear it for science. And I'm delighted, of course, to be joined by wonderful folks from our team, including Rebecca Tepper and Elizabeth Mahoney and Melissa Hoffer as well. I'm going to come back to some things later on, but I do want to acknowledge the work, though, that you have done. I think it was a few years ago when Melissa Hoffer first showed me the map that was out there that showed the different gas leaks in communities and neighborhoods across our state, and I was really shocked. It was my sort of first awakening to this as an issue, and it just didn't seem to make sense to me that this be allowed to sort of continue, because it was in no one's interest. It's not in the consumer's interests or the utility company's interests. It's certainly not in the interests of our planet, as we've come to know more, and I personally have come to know more about methane and the particularly powerful agent that it is. We know that pound for pound, methane warms this climate 30 times, or maybe even more than 30 times, right? You'll tell me, is it 34? Something like that. It's 30 times, more than carbon dioxide over a 100-year period. That's a big deal. And that's why the Attorney General's office for the last several years has been fighting for the issuance and maintenance of federal rules that will limit methane air pollution. And we're also very focused on this issue because we know that gas leaks in Massachusetts annually release billions of cubic feet of methane, cost consumers millions of dollars, and harm the climate. But thanks to your efforts over the last 5 years, Massachusetts has made great strides in remediating leaky natural gas infrastructure. And the gas companies in this room have replaced miles and miles of pipes, with more to come. So you took on this problem of the super emitters and recognized that they were contributing and causing a significant share of the methane emissions in this state. And you worked to work on solutions. And, one of the things I love about Massachusetts is that we live in a place of innovation, right? And so where there is a problem, if we don't know the solution, we figure out a way to get there, right? And so that also is, I think, really terrific what's happened here. So as I say, I think it's a model for the country. When you think about you're faced with a problem, you don't just sort of sit on your hands or sit back. You engage and you figure out a path forward. And I think here, coming together as activists, scientists, utilities, all working collaboratively together to overcome the challenge, it's really significant. Ignoring naysayers along the way. I've learned a little bit in my business. It's kind of important sometimes to tune out those who say something can't be done. Think about where we would be in history if we listened to those naysayers. And so I think through your respective dialogue and your hard work, you look to science as a guide to decision making. And now more than ever, applying science, recognizing, valuing science, valuing facts, research, knowledge is so incredibly important. As you continue, as we all should, looking to apply creativity and innovation to solve problems. So I know the groundbreaking work done here is going to make a difference, certainly in Massachusetts, but it's going to reduce methane emissions across this country. And as your work shows, once again, that reducing greenhouse gas emissions is going to save consumers money. I think in our increasingly polarized world where people with different perspectives rarely sit down together, where science is demonized, you've shown others that there is a path forward, and I thank you for that. I also wanted to just have a few, if you'll indulge me, a few comments on the times. You know, we're here to celebrate an important step forward in efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Massachusetts. Over the summer alone, we've seen and watched on television the devastation caused by unprecedented forest fires, so large that they're visible from space, burning across western United States and Canada, and even across Europe. In the past few weeks, we've seen the devastation of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, each made more potent and more destructive by climate change. We've seen from southern China to Mumbai to Sudan, climate change wreak havoc in the form of powerful typhoons, floods, and droughts. Homes destroyed, entire towns blown away or underwater in some instances, forests burned to the ground, families struggling just to meet their very basic needs. Of course, our hearts go out to the folks in Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and elsewhere who are working so hard right now to just live, let alone get their lives back after these ruinous and costly natural disasters. I say natural disasters, but as everyone in this room knows, really knows, this is what climate change looks like. This is what climate change looks like. We are living it, we are experiencing it, and now more than ever, we have to work together for the future of our planet. Now that's why some of us as state AGs have banded together and are fighting hard against the Trump administration to roll back the progress that we've made. People ask me, you're spending a lot of time suing Trump. Well, yes, we are, because fundamentally, this is an administration this is about protecting our interests. This morning, I testified at a conference on healthcare costs. We sued and intervened to defend the ACA because I think it's really important, as we know from the Massachusetts experience, that people have access to healthcare. We've sued the EPA and Scott Pruitt multiple times. Why? Because I think that we should be so proud of the clean energy investments that we've made and the future that we have here. Not just with respect to the efforts and the leadership we've shown to protect our planet, but also you think about economically where we're going. So yes, it's resulted in us taking on an administration multiple times on multiple fronts, but that's what it's about. We need advocacy, organization as well. It's not just in the courts, and I greatly admire and respect the advocacy and the organization. That's what it's going to take to stop bad things from happening, to stop president and administration for unlawful and really immoral efforts to repeal the climate and other environmental rules that protect us, that protect our water, our air, our oceans, our lands. I always thought that our charge, not just as Americans, but as citizens of the world, was to leave the planet better off than the planet we walked into, right? And isn't that what every parent wants for their child? They want life to be better, to be easier for their child. I know that's what my parents wanted for me. I know that's what my grandparents wanted for my parents. But think about where we are right now. We are really on the precipice of not being able to deliver that for future generations, but it is going to be because of the advocacy, the collaboration among and across stakeholders, the likes of which are represented so wonderfully in this room and through this alliance, that we're going to get there. Now, As I said, we have taken action against the administration to try to stop them from dismantling some important protections that are in place. And I want you to know, because I think it's important for people to know, that we've had some wins along the way. Just last week, only days after we sued, the administration backed down and put back into place a federal transportation rule that requires states to track transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions and set targets for reducing them. That's good. We won another case earlier this year on methane emissions in the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. That's a win. The court there, I'll tell you, for those of you who didn't follow, although I think a lot of people in this room follow this stuff pretty closely, but there the court found, and this is the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, a significant court, found that the administration acted unlawfully in attempting to halt a key climate rule requiring new well sites and compressor stations to detect and repair methane leaks. Okay? And that was a win. And last spring, the administration quickly reversed course after we sued to stop them from delaying issuance of ceiling fan energy efficiency standards. Who does that? It's a pro-consumer thing. Who actually was going to roll that back? They were, but now they're not. So look, our strategy will continue to be to use the law, to use the courts, to try to hold on to the progress that we've made. Because fundamentally, this is about protecting our planet, protecting our air, protecting our water, protecting our future. I sometimes say, I don't know what planet the president is on, but for us, there is no planet B. So we're going to keep working on that. But as an attorney general, and I know some folks are here from other states, welcome to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's great to have all of you here, even if you don't like our baseball or football team. But you know, my message is simple right now. I think part of what we've seen in the most startling of ways is not only actions that are really cruel in some instances, immoral in others, but downright representative of attacks on science, on knowledge. We happen to be sitting here on the campus of MIT, where earlier today it was announced that a Nobel laureate, one of many to come from this campus, and there's a pretty good school I know just down the way too, they've had their share. Within Massachusetts, you know, we're a knowledge-based economy, and we are a state and a country that has benefited from adherence to and respect for science, for data, for facts, for knowledge, for this unyielding, never-ending quest, right, directed at innovation. And unfortunately, we're confronted with a federal administration that seems really hell-bent on stopping that. But as I've said, I believe deeply that the power always lies with the people here in Massachusetts and across this country. And that's why now is our time. We've got a moral obligation to defend science, to fight for science, to protect our planet, to defend and fight for our future. So this is a moment, this is an opportunity for folks to rise up, to lead, to fight for our children and our future. And again, I think that's what today represents. You know, here in Massachusetts, we tend to be a little provincial about some things, so some of you out-of-staters indulge me. You know, we look at ourselves in some respects as having led the way on any number of fronts. And I think that's a mantle, that's a responsibility. It's both a burden and a responsibility, and right now we have an opportunity to lead. I think about one of the first cases that came down from the Supreme Court when I started in the Attorney General's office years ago was Massachusetts versus EPA. Remember that, it's June of 2007. And that was a remarkable landmark win in the United States Supreme Court that forever changed case law and precedent. In its ruling, of course, the court affirmed that the EPA not only had the authority, but had the duty, consistent with scientific evidence to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Now, Now, that case, of course, laid the foundation for the EPA to limit greenhouse pollution from vehicles, oil and gas infrastructure, and new and existing power plants. These rules have meant more efficient cars, healthier air, and lower electric bills. Today, Massachusetts has one of the stringent state climate change laws on the books. We know that. But meeting our greenhouse gas reduction requirements and keeping our Paris commitment requires us to take swift and bold action. It's time for Massachusetts to seriously evaluate carbon pricing. Yeah. And that means thinking carefully about how to do it and what the economics look like. It also means that RGGI could be expanded to include the transportation sector. There are carbon fee proposals pending in our state legislature right now, and there are other models that we can look to. But we need to start on this now. Now's the time. We can't wait. And we need to join other American cities and the state of California and put ourselves on a path to obtaining most of our energy from renewable sources by 2050. You know, these are bold goals. But if we're not going to act now, in the face of all we are experiencing and have experienced, when are we going to act? We need to step up and lead as well when it comes to the transition to electric vehicles. Some of us read the news about GM's announcement, and we'll see more, I guess, from Ford later today or tomorrow. Massachusetts is uniquely positioned to make electric vehicles a real option for all Massachusetts families, and to get in on the ground floor of an industry that will transform the way the entire world moves around. Massachusetts can lead by surging our commitment with an aggressive plan that puts us on a path to go even well beyond the state's current goal of 300,000 registered zero-emissions vehicles by 2025. We need to ratchet up incentives, educate consumers, and make smart infrastructure investments. And as a result of our settlement with Volkswagen for its diesel deception, Massachusetts is going to have a head start on putting those kinds of plans into action. So again, I just want to thank you for this conference. I want to thank you for the work of the Alliance, all who've come together on this really, really important topic and initiative. And I mean it when I say let it be a reflection, an example of how we can work together and navigate the many challenges and the problems that we face, not just as a state, but as a country. I'm so heartened to be around people who take the opportunity to recognize that there's a problem, there's an issue, and you know what, find a way forward, find a solution. And that gives me hope about the future of this country, whether you're talking about the environment or energy, you're talking about healthcare, you're talking about the care of our most vulnerable populations. And I think now more than ever, one thing I say, because I am sometimes asked, one thing I say is that there was a guy not too far from here who said once that all politics is local. Now, I say that because, you know, I think that's where it's at. And for anyone who is feeling marginalized, disempowered, disillusioned, there's no time for that, right? The planet depends on you. Your kids depend on you, your grandkids depend on you. The future really depends on all of us to act in ways large and small, individually, but importantly, collectively, collaboratively, to come together to move us forward, to create greater prosperity, to create a healthier planet, and create greater opportunity. We have that opportunity now. You're a great embodiment of that. You're a great example of that. And I always say that transformational change in this country has not come from elected officials or politicians. We may try, and hopefully we try and succeed in places, But it comes really from the people, and it comes through small and quiet acts that may not capture the headlines or whatever is on television news at night. But that's where real transformation comes. And through your advocacy, through your education, you make your community, this state, and ultimately this country and the planet a better place. Thank you. We look forward to continuing to work in partnership with you.
And for your fine services, we would like to present you with our cookies. As I said at the very start of the day, this is one of the most beautifully designed program agendas I've ever seen. The genius of our closing event is that next up we will be hearing from Anna Albright, who will be concluding our event. Anna is a senior from Cambridge, Rindge and Latin. And as we've touched upon many times in this journey, the essential role of connecting to that deeper purpose is ultimately what's going to get us through all of the complexities ahead. We've begun by resolving gas leaks. We've had conversations amongst us that now steer us towards electric vehicles, renewable energy, and really scaling up this transition beyond fossil fuels. We're developing a fitness as a stakeholder ecosystem that we can now turn to greater and greater impact. Along the way, we're always going to have to return to a deeper emotional courage. We're going to have to keep returning to that. The way to return to it is to understand what's at stake. The most important stakeholder to tell us that is the upcoming generations. So we'll be concluding with the voice of our upcoming generation, Anna.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm so inspired by everyone that's come before me from the two diametrical opposite sides traditionally that have worked together to our Attorney General, Maura Healey, who just spoke. And as Leith mentioned, I'm a senior in high school right now. So we'll get back to that in a little bit. First, I'd like to begin with a little story. So it's my sophomore year of high school, 2014, and I am taking AP Environmental Science. I have an amazing teacher who does what any truly amazing teacher can do, which is she fills me with a fiery passion for this subject. And since this is climate change we're talking about, suddenly everything I see is so scary, so imminent, and so bleak. And I'm obsessed. So with all that in mind, it's Thanksgiving, and I am seated at the table with, on one side, my grandmother, who I call Granny T, and on the other side, her friend, who had just gotten her PhD in environmental studies. I'm super excited to talk to her friend because I think, wow, we can bounce ideas off of each other. She has a lot of knowledge, I can learn. But when I talk to her, she talks down to me, like I'm a child, like I can't possibly understand anything or make a change. And then later, I'm talking to my grandmother, expressing my urgency, and what she says is, Anna B., we've already achieved all that we need to. Look at all the awareness. That made me so angry that I ran out of the Thanksgiving room crying because awareness is not enough. If you see someone get shot and you don't call 911, that awareness that they're hurt will not save their lives. It's the exact same with our environment. And for me, for my friends up here, for my generation, for your children, it's so scary because, well, I was born in 2000, makes for easy math. So when I look at climate models, that's the year, that's how old I will be. So for instance, when I look at the Cambridge assessment on how climate change will affect this city, and I see that by 2035, storms can put us underwater, that's when I'm going to be 35 years old. When I see that by 2050, sea levels could have risen up to 2.6 meters, meaning many coastal cities will be underwater, that's when I'm going to still very much be in my peak. So for my parents, for Granny T and her friend, it's not as tangible because they're going to be into old age or maybe not even on this planet anymore. But for me, I'm going to be in my peak. And it's easy to feel paralyzed because it's an enormous problem with so many symptoms. And when I first learned about it and when I think about it, and as many of my friends think about it, I become so overwhelmed that instead of doing anything, I distract myself. As I mentioned, I am a high school senior right now. So I'm in the middle of the college application process. And anyone who recently has had children who's gone through that or done it themselves knows how long and overwhelming this process is. But when I think about everything I need to do, I just go and watch Netflix because I'm so overwhelmed. And it's the same, I think, with the environmental movement. Like, if you think about everything, it's so overwhelming that you're not spurred into action. But if you do what we're doing here today and focus all of your attention onto one subject, onto one area of change that you want to make and that you can make, because it's specific and it's not everything, that's when we begin to see a change. So, knowing how effective me and these people and my generation will be, we're going to work on, with all of our effort, into making our world livable. Could I quickly invite all the presenters to come up on stage with me? So, these people and I are going to do all the work we can to make sure the Earth is livable. But now, wait, really quickly. But now, you guys are my friends, so we're all going to work together. Thank you.